The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Jesus said to the chief priests and elders of the people, "What is your opinion? A man had 2 sons. He came to the first and said, 'Son, go out and work in the vineyard today.' And he said in reply, 'I will not.' But afterwards changed his mind and went. The man came to the other son and gave the same order. And he said in reply, 'Yes, sir,' but did not go. Which of the 2 did his father's will?" And they answered, "The first." Jesus said to them, "Amen, I say to you, tax collectors and prostitutes are entering the kingdom of God before you. When John came to you in the way of righteousness, you did not believe him, but tax collectors and prostitutes did. Yet, even when you saw that, you did not later change your minds and believe him." My sisters and brothers, the gospel of the Lord. Well, here we are at the final weekend of our preaching series that we've entitled The Truth About Other People, which, really is always up for grabs. What is the truth about other people? And over the last month, we've had a lot of conversations, at least from here, about what do we think about other people? Are they a burden? Are they a blessing? Are they, people that we can't do without, people that we would love to do without? Is it all the above? And more importantly, what does Jesus have to say about our relationship with other people? How we could, how we should, how we're encouraged to, mostly through a set of parables that we have been working through in the gospel readings. So today's kind of orientation the question might be the truth about other people. Is it true that we could change the behavior of other people? Is it now? If anybody, most of you could like no, but let's just see what kind of richness we can find around that question. About 8 years ago, I read this book called Eating Animals by Jonathan Safran Foer. And I grew up on a cattle ranch, so, I'm used to the whole meat thing, We raised cattle for consumption, and we consumed a lot of cattle on the ranch as well. And so I had just been like a regular person. So I read this book, and this book really convinced me to change my behavior. After I read this book, I became a vegetarian. And the reason I did that is because throughout this book, this guy kind of starts out not a vegetarian and then ends up being a vegetarian. And he does all this research about like how meat is produced. I thought I knew how meat was produced. I was wrong. I did not know. Like 90% of meat is produced in kind of factory settings, kind of containment, really concentrated ways of producing animal protein. And it's really has a lot of cost to it, right? And so it's really hard on the environment because of the water and the waste that comes out of it. It's really hard on the animals because they're, contained like in a factory. It's really hard on the workers that work in those conditions typically. It's really hard on a whole range of things. And when I read it, I thought, wait a second. I want the earth to be, respected, and I want it to be okay. I believe that people should have good jobs and they shouldn't be suffering. And I believe that animals should have good lives as well, even though, yes, we eat them, but they don't have to be raised that way. And so I had all these values or beliefs, but I was acting in this way of just being like a regular meat eater. And it took me to read that book. I thought, oh, wait a second. Why don't I just stop eating meat that's produced that way? And I thought, well, I could do, just sustainably produced meat. Well, I don't have enough money to do that all the time. So I just took out meat. It was just like, okay. And the reason I tell you this story is because it's just a story about how I was, and it doesn't matter if you're a vegetarian or not, just say this isn't me banging, a vegetarian drum to try to get your attention, but it's more like how I changed my behavior to try to be in line with what I believed. And I think that is a way that I could do it. Now, often we think that we should, have other people change their behavior. We see their behavior and we're like, you got to change that. You got to change that. You got to change what you believe, how you're living in the world. So Republican, Democrat, or maybe what they think about the climate, or what they think about immigration, or they need to change their behavior because they're acting this horrible way. They need to change it. And religious people, that's you and me, religious people have a long history of thinking other people should change their behavior, right? Other people should come to church. That's classic. You should come to church. That would be a behavior change. You should stop living with your boyfriend, your girlfriend. That's a behavior change. You should stop that, or start this. Religious people are usually really good at trying to, tell other people what their behavior should be. And we didn't just start this, right? So right in this parable, you get to see Jesus talking to the religious people about their behavior, that it isn't syncing up with their belief. Their behavior is not syncing up with their belief. And he tells this very short, very pointed parable about a man with 2 sons. The first son says, come into the vineyard and work. And the son says, nope, but later changes his mind and goes. Another son, the son says yes and doesn't go. And that's the parable right there. Now it's a parable, right? So we have to ask, where's God in this? So let's go with God being the father, sure, okay. And his sons being us, sons and daughters. And so Jesus is laying this out for his audience. And then what he usually doesn't do, he does in this case, he applies the parable to his listeners. He says, okay, so who's doing the right thing? And they all like, well, yeah, the kid that said no, but eventually went. And he said, you've missed the point in your own lives. You can see it in the parable, but you can't do it in your own lives yet. He says, you are the second son that says yes and doesn't go. He lays it out. And he says, prostitutes and tax collectors, who initially, apparently with their lives, weren't interested in leading a good life, but then they changed. They listened to John the Baptist and they followed Christ. They changed their behavior. Now, this is an important parable for all of us who have our own lives and a set of beliefs that we're carrying around. And we can ask ourselves, are we actually changing our behavior to be in line with our beliefs? Are we doing that? And this parable suggests that we can. No matter how we started, we could change. We could bring our behavior in line with our beliefs. Because just, if you ask yourself, which son are you? Which child are you, right? Jesus has asked you, God has asked you to come into the vineyard, to serve, to pour out your life for other people, because that's what the vineyard's always about. It's about other people. Has asked you. And if you said yes, but then you didn't change your behavior? Or did you maybe sometime in your past said nope, but then went in and tried to do your best anyway? Because here's just an important piece for us all to hold on to, is that what you actually believe is how you act, no matter what you're telling yourself, because we often tell ourselves another story. And here's a very clear one, is that if you think you're beloved by God, if you believe you're beloved by God, the way you know that you really believe that is because you act as though you're worthy. You act as though you're beloved. You act as though someone has your back, Jesus, that someone loves you. If, on the other hand, you believe you're worthless, that you're always falling short, that you're a failure, that God doesn't care about you, then you lead a life and behave like that. You behave as though you're not worthy of anything. You behave as though your body doesn't matter. You behave as like who cares? Because you're gonna die anyway, right? So what is it that you actually believe? And you can tell that by how you're actually acting, right? So it's easy to say, just change your beliefs. Harder to do, right? And I think one of the conditions that we all can change what we believe is when we're in a community where we belong, where we actually are connected to other people, where we can have a sense of, this is possible. We see other people that have changed. We see people that are living full lives of, in this case, being beloved. How do we do that? We see people engaged in the vineyard because we belong to a community where we see it, experience it, know it's possible. Living our lives with other people, right? To whom we belong and they belong to us. Now, there's lots of ways that you can move into that. Some of us have families that are that way, which is terrific. Some of us have families like that, but they're not near us, And so we have to build our own sort of community to belong in. Parishes are always an opportunity for that, where people show up and they could actually connect and belong to one another in which to shape these beliefs in order to change behavior. That's the sequence, right? So a parish is always, there's lots of opportunity. One of them is, just as a small plug for what we're doing, is that we do small groups here, and we're launching another set. And you can sign up online or get more information online or figure out how to be part of it. Maybe this is the right time in your life to be part of a small group. And you can sign up outside after Mass at a table right there. There's different groups to belong to in order to actually continue to believe your beloved, in order to change behavior that you're sick of doing. That's what's possible. That's what's possible in a parish. That's what's possible in these readings that we hear of Jesus calling out religious people, and not to harass them or intimidate them, but to invite them to fullness, to invite them into the vineyard, to make their beliefs activated in their behavior.